Hello and welcome to Zurich House Development Analyser walkthrough. My name is Nigel Green and I'm a director of Equa Group, and the aim of the webinar is to walk you through the step-by-step process of how this deal has been analysed. So first things first, you can see in front of you there the front end of the development analyzer. Now really this is a dashboard. Yes, it does have many inputs, but essentially there's multiple calculation engines that are sat behind this sheet that all feed through information and results to this particular dashboard. So before we start and go through the specifics of how the deal is analysed, we will just familiarise ourselves with this development analyzer. So this is the front end. You can see down here there's lots of tabs that provides various functions as part of the development analyzer. So we've got a tab here that's got the layouts in. So this is a really useful tab. It's a passive tab, so there's no particular action happening in this tab, but it's information. So the screenshots of the drawings, and it's a great point for reference. The comparables. Now we will come back to this in a bit, but this is where we store all the comparable information to support the gross development value. We've got a tab here for calculating the stamp duty, be it residential, be it non-residential, or if the opportunity arises that we can buy the building possibly as a transfer of going concern, and therefore a slightly less stamp duty rate. Team costs, program, automatically throws out a program. VAT bridging, so if there's a requirement for VAT to be paid on the purchase price, we can bring in a temporary bridge, and there's a calculator there to work out the costs of that bridge. We've got three tabs here. These are the cash flows, so each of the developments are automatically cash flowed as an illustration, and we do it at three levels. We do it at a low, medium and high level. So you can see they're all the same, but they all deal with different levels of results. You've got costs of funds here. So again, this is calculated on a low, medium and high level. So that just works out the interest cost over the term and any exit fees that may be applicable. Capital allowances there. So again, an automatic calculator. Should capital allowances be applicable to the property? Generally, they only come into play if the intention of the scheme is to buy, develop and hold, and capital allowances work really well as an offset against income. If it's a buy, develop and sell, not really applicable, but there's a calculator there nonetheless. The normal disclaimers and a version control here, which we brought into play probably about a year ago now, considering that the development of this, the actual software development of this analyzer started probably 3.5 years ago. 48 changes doesn't really represent the amount of updates and development that's gone on with this analyzer, but it's very good to capture any changes, any updates, and bring in a version control number. Okay, so back to the development analyzer. So first things first, obviously you've got information, which is standard, just detail, the address here, which obviously would need an input, and then really I would go straight for providing input into this box here called gross development value, GDV. So this is the value, what we're trying to assess here is the value of the overall scheme. So when it's all developed, all finished and all sold, so everything has been sold, what is that number in terms of value that's going to be coming back? So this is this part of the development analyzer purely focuses on GDV. So how do we fill this information in? Where do we start? Well, first of all, we'll go to site, we'll engage with our professionals team, we'll go to site, we'll undertake a detailed measure of the site, and then the professional team will then go away and then they will produce some space planning drawings, a couple of options, probably maybe 3 options in this case. So the architect came back, and I think option 1 was a full 1-bed scheme. Okay, so 1 bed throughout. I think we got up to about 55 units, something like that. There was then an option 2 scheme. So this was maybe a couple of 2 beds and the rest 1 beds. And option 3, which is the one that we decided to go with, which was a nice blend of units, of 2 and 1 bed. So we just felt that the quantum just needed a bit of variation within it, and it would attract a slightly wider market when we come to resell. So you can see here we've got the 1 beds in green, and we've got the 2 beds here in the light blue. Okay, so that that information. Sorry, just going back. You can see here what the architect has done. He's carried out a space planning exercise, but he's considered building control matters. So he's put in fire escape routes, fire escape distances, all these sorts of things that are required to gain full compliance. He's got the risers in there, so he's starting to think about how services will need to run through the building and be distributed around the building. He's obviously considered the lift and the lift motor room here. So it really gets down into quite a lot of accuracy, even at this stage. What he's also done on his CAD machine, he's put in specific dimensions for the flats as well, which is great information. All this information we need to capture. He's put specific references for each of the flats, so when we're talking over the phone, we can talk about flat number 9 or flat number 6, and it's very, very useful. So all that information then is extracted, and it's populated into this part of the sheet. So you can see we've got our reference numbers, we've got our location of the flats within the building, we've got the type of flat that we're looking at. Now, so you can see here that we've got the 1 and 2 beds, but we've actually allocated parking to each of the flats. We've inputted the dimensions, which come straight off the drawing. So again, accurate information. And then the sheet then asks a couple more questions. So it's asking a question, does this particular flat, or could this particular flat have its own specific entrance? So rather than going through, the main entrance doors into a foyer and then maybe going up along a corridor to your front door, is there a chance that we can put a front door on the outside so people can park up, get out the car, and then go straight into their flat wherever they may be? Well, the answer to this one is actually yes. So the intention here as part of the final design is to give people on the ground floor their own access. The next question being asked here is, could we provide any outside space? Well, again, the answer is yes. And all these questions being asked and answers being given potentially drive additional value into the flats, which is obviously great news. So once we've got all that information in, very, very quickly, I just do a screenshot of this space here. Do a screenshot of it, and then just ping it off on an email to a couple of 3 local residential agents. And the inquiry to the agents is, look, we've got a scheme. We'd really value your honest opinion in terms of the actual resale value or the achievable value of these flats, and also would like to understand if you could support us in the sale program, and if you can you advise what your fees are in terms of that? So you're really engaging with the agent, and it tends to promote a very prompt response. But the key there is we want to know the sale value that is achievable, not the sale value that will be marketed, because this is generally higher than the achievable. Everybody likes to do a deal, don't they? So this is the achievable value, is what we're looking for. So that goes off on an email, and that's working away in the background. So in the meantime, we need to be filling in some additional boxes. So you can see here the input cells are yellow. To stay absolutely away from the coloured cells. These are formula cells, so we stay away from those, but it's asking more questions around input, around a low pound per square foot and a high pound per square foot. Now this is trying to simulate what the sort of valuation each of these flats will have. Okay, so how do we get to these numbers? Right, okay, so we will now go to the comparables tab. Now the comparables tab here is asking and it's actually testing the market. And we do 3 tests on the specific market and the sold comparables within the area. So test 1 is looking for some sold comparables, some local comparables there, and we use Rightmove. Rightmove has got a very clever function, very slick function that links directly to the land registry. So we can access, it's all public information, so we can access that information there, and that will give us examples of flats that have been sold within a radius of the postcode of our target building. And we look generally for something that's been sold within the last 12, maybe 18 months. And we're looking for, some alignment with the sort of product that we're looking to develop as well. So you can see here, I've taken a number of samples. Here we've got the addresses, we've got the value, the sold value, we've got when it was sold, we've got the number of beds. So clearly this is the 1-bed table, so it's all 1 bed. Generally, it's not that easy from land registry to identify the location of the flat within the building, but we've got another test for that, and I'll explain in a minute how we get that information. But this information here, we just cut and paste, just tidy it up a bit, and then that produces quite a nice little table there. So what we're going to try and achieve now is we're looking for the size of each of these sold comparables. Now, where we go to find this information is the EPC register. Now, this is a national register. There's a legal requirement there for a valid EPC to be, which is Energy Performance Certificate, to be provided as part of any sale. Okay, so all these sold comparables will have an EPC. So I just go off to the register. I pull down the specific EPC for each of these addresses, and lo and behold, on the top right-hand corner of the EPC itself has got the size of the dwelling, which we extract, and we just pop into this this particular part here. So once that's inputted, again, the EPC is very good also for giving location in building. It won't go into the detail of it's on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd floor. Generally on the ground, top floor or mid floor. That's generally the information that's provided. But again, all useful information. So we pop all that in. There's auto calculators here and formulas, and that just spits out and gets us to a pound per square foot, or pound per square metre if that's what we're after. But on this occasion, we're after a pound per square foot of sold comparables in the area. Okay, so we do that for 1 and 2 beds. So you can see the 2 beds here are fully populated. We've got the prices, when they were sold, the number of beds, location, size has been extracted from the EPC register, and again that's just pushing all those numbers out. So what we're going to do at this point, we're going to just make an assessment of our comparable information and just try and get this comparable information more relevant to, or more aligned with, the product that we're looking to produce, as it were. So we just scroll down to the bottom of this sheet here, and you can see a comparison table that's available for us. The grey information here is a direct pull through from the Development Analyser dashboard. So this has got all the information that's on that sheet at this moment in time. So we can see here that of the one bed flats, if we look at the smallest flat, I think I can see there 33 square meters. And we look at the largest one bed, and I think I can see the largest being 43 square meters. So 33 to 43. And with regard to the two beds, I can see the smallest being 46. So 46 to 52, I think, is the range. Okay. So when we go back to the captured information up here, what I'm looking for, and the reason I've highlighted them in yellow, is I'm looking for relevant comparables here. So you can see here, we've got a couple that are outside of our range. Really, there's no one bed. We're not installing any one beds or developing any one beds that are 51 or 56 square meters. But the highlighted ones in yellow are good representative examples of the finished product. The same with the two beds. So there's less on these comparables, but you see 58, 49 are the closest we've got to our examples there. So all we do then, we just get a blended rate. The blended rate is an average of the selected comparables above, and the same with the two beds there. So that's just an average. Okay, so we've got for the one beds £542 per square foot, and we've got 405 for the two beds. So this information then I just plug into here. So there's the 542 and there's the 405, and this just looks at what we've got in our sheet, and then just calculates out a representative value. As we can see there. And then the third column in each of these little sections here, it's then creating a delta point. So it's looking at how does this number then perform with what we've got in our sheet at this moment. And you can see there's low points and there's high points all the way down. So you can see that all the way down to the bottom, which is good, useful information. We then do another test. So we then go off to we use a website called propertydata.co.uk. So it works very similar to Rightmove, and again it's targeting land registry and other information there, but it produces some quite nice dashboard illustrations. So here you can see the search area. So this is actually off their system. So we've pulled a number of targets here, data targets. I think just having a look now. So Zurich House is sort of here, this sort of location. So you can see we've pulled a fair old range of radius around that location to get the information into the tables above. So we can see one bed's there. It's a bit of a scattergun of price range. I think quite nicely it looks at the 80% of the properties. So it comes up from the lowest 10%, and it comes down from the highest 10%, and it gives you a range of the 80% sort of position. It'll give you an indication of the average as well. And then the two beds the same. So, again, we come up 10%, we come down 10%, and then you've got the 80% in the centre. So 220 to 318, and the average, again, information there. So while we're in that particular website, we also pull down the rental. So this is around the Plan B exit, if we decide to hold and rent out. So that's always useful information as well. Okay, so the third, excuse me, the third test is, if you remember, we've sent off the email right at the start of this process to the local agents, and now we're going to analyse those returns. So we can see here on the left, Connells have come back. So they've looked at our numbers. We haven't influenced them at all in terms of where we are in price. All we've done is we've given them a flat number, we've given them the type of flat, where it is in the building, and we've given them a size. That's all they've done. So they've come back with the prices based upon that information. So, and just to remember, the specific question was, we want achievable values. Okay, so these are the local agents. They sell these every day of the week, so they're in the best position to give us an indication of what's achievable. So that information we extract and we put into this comparison table. So you can see we've got Connells there, we've got all the prices that they come back with, and then quite cleverly it just does the calculation and just works out the pound per square foot. But also interestingly, it does the delta again. So this is again is looking at how does that number compare with what's in the sheet at the moment, and we can see we've got, you know, higher, lower, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. Okay, I think we've got, yeah, there we go. We've got leaders as well. So leaders have come back with a proposal as well in terms of what they feel is achievable on our scheme. So again, we grab their information, mainly focusing on their unit prices, and then we give them their own little column, which is here. Enter all the details in, and again, we've got the opportunity to do the delta view as well, which is very useful stuff. There's one more paragon. So they are the potential lender, senior debt lender for the site. They work quite closely with Connells and are happy to rely on Connells numbers. So for the purpose of this exercise, I've just put the lender valuation numbers in there as well. Okay, which is on the basis of the Connells numbers. So if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, so we can see at the moment in time we've got a base case, which is the development analyzer low position. So that's 10.510 million. If we were to run the development analyzer based upon the sold comparables, we would have got to 10.517, so really close, £7,000 difference. If we were to run the development analyzer based on Connell's numbers, we would be £350,000 higher, with leaders £495,000 higher, and if we went with the lender, £350,000 higher. So from an analyzer perspective, and you know, trying to be sort of conservative but realistic, you know, I'm quite comfortable where we are, and on the basis that the numbers work at that level, I think that gives some good grounding and validation around this particular opportunity and the potential of upside, I think, a bit further down the track. So that's how we do the local comparables, and then so at the moment that has established that, you know, we're quite comfortable where these particular numbers are. You can see we've got a low and a high. So we've been focusing on validating the low numbers. The high numbers are simply, I think in this case, let's have a look. Yeah, so it's 5% on top of the low numbers to create a little bit of a range, you know, of opportunity, you know, within this deal. And we further move on to the headlines and then create a mid-range as well between the two. But we'll get onto that in a little while. Okay, so we've got our summary here. So 10.510 million to 11 million, that's GDV. But, you know, let's look at this development. Gross development value is about all the values. You know, when we sell everything and hand the keys over and we walk away, you know, from this development for good, you know, what is the total amount of money that, you know, we can establish, you know, within this scheme. So we've looked at parking spaces. So we've got a total today of 64 parking spaces. These are fully compliant parking spaces. However, we're going to lose 8 of those. Now, 8 of those is associated with this undercroft area here, as you can see on the photo. Okay, so the intentions of the scheme is that we're going to infill between these columns and on the outside of these columns. We're going to infill and create 4 apartments at this level. Now, in doing so, we're going to lose 8 parking spaces. So straight away, the 64, we take 8 off. We then have allocated 48 residential units. And if you remember, each we've allocated with a parking space. So 64 minus 8 minus 48, that leaves us with unallocated parking of 8 units, okay, or 8 spaces. Now, do we think that with a matter of scarcity, so we've only got 8 across 48 apartments, do we feel there's a high probability we can sell those on? Absolutely, yes. People generally today, particularly the 2 beds, probably, will have 2 cars, those sort of things. So, do they want to park one car on the complex and have to park the other one on the street? Probably not. So, I think there's a high probability that the flat owners will take the opportunity of adding an extra a £15,000 to their purchase price and get a second parking space. The last and final thing that we've got to sell is the freehold. So we're selling 48 leaseholds. So these leaseholds will be constructed in a 125 year lease basis. They're going to be friendly leases. We generally seek advice from the buyer's lender in terms of how the lease construction needs to be. What generally comes back in the term of a friendly lease is an increase in ground rent, generally every 5 years by RPI. So that generally is termed as a excuse me, a friendly lease. So that's what we will produce. Also fairly conservative in terms of the value of the ground rent. So nationwide at the moment, and a few other lenders as well, have limited the ground rent of properties that they will support to 0.1% of the purchase price. So, to cover the base across all of these flats, we've gone down that rationale. So 0.1% of the average of all the flats, that's 10.510 million divided by 43 times 0.1% is 219 on the low. And how we value the ground rents and the freehold sale is on a multiple basis. So we're currently achieving today, we're currently achieving 27 times multiple. So you can see I've throttled that back a little bit to 25 times. So there could be some additional value in there, but just to be slightly conservative at this stage and slightly cautious. So how the value is derived is 48 units on a ground rent of 219 on a 25 times multiple. So 48 times 219 times 25 will get to that number. And then on the high, because the GDV is slightly higher and the flat value on the high illustration is a bit higher, so therefore the ground rent's a bit higher, so we get a slightly different number on the high. Okay, so all of that added together to a grand total of GDV. So we've got here 10.892 million to 11.431 million. Okay, as a range. That will then get transferred up to the headlines. As you can see, there's the 10.8 and there's the 11.4. But you can see we've added now a midpoint. So this is an average position between the low and the high, just creating that midpoint, which is useful for analysis. So before we go on and look further into this headline box, you can see we need to now establish the development cost. So we've got the income, the potential income on the outturn, but we now need to derive the development cost. So referring back to the first box over here, so we've got the summary of costs. Okay. Now, the first box to fill in is generally around the asking price. So it's an understanding of what the seller wants to achieve in terms of selling the building. Okay. Now, sometimes the sellers don't have a particular price. So, and with this occasion, it was for us to put a proposition forward. So we've, as you can see, the asking price and the purchase price is the same because we've derived what that number is. There's VAT applicable to the purchase. Then we come down to the build. So this is the budget in this illustration that covers off the main contract. So it'll be one, probably a JCT form contract that will be issued to a major contractor to carry out the full refurbishment of this site. So under CDM, the term is principal contractor, so they will be employed on that basis. So we can see here that the principal numbers here are on a pound per square meter basis. Okay, so this information has come via our current projects, where we see the market is, an assessment of the building, whether it's slightly more complex to other projects that we've got underway at the moment, or slightly less, etc. So it's a bit of a feel, but we feel quite comfortable with the numbers. At least we can get the main contract certainly within this budget. So how it calculates it, it looks for the net internal area. Now, the net internal area is essentially the space or the area where the flats are. So it doesn't take into account corridors. It doesn't take into account the entrance lobby, lift, maintenance area, risers. That's all communal space. Okay. So this is just looking at the NIA, the net internal area. So you can see here we've got 1,787. Okay. If we were to total all of these flats up, we actually get to a higher number. But the reason there is that on this particular one, I've split out the rates. Because if you remember when I mentioned earlier, we've got the conversion activity within the building, but that conversion activity, it needs to consider that we've already got the walls, we've already got, let's say, the glazing, the floors there. We're converting from within. Whereas this undercroft area, we've actually got to physically build the external walls, so it's a slightly greater cost. So I've split out that area. So if we go to the area data up here, you can see that I've split out. So this is I've termed conversion plus, which is the undercroft part. And we've got 152 square meters. This is the residential accommodation bit, and then we've got 175 in total. So this is the whole area, including corridors. So that leaves then the NIA for the rest of the site, which is 1,787. With a GIA of 2,173. So the 2,173 includes the residential area, the corridors, lift lobbies, entrance halls, etc. It's a whole building. So this information comes through here. We've got a little budget in there for any external works as well. Some, it could be carport lining, it could be some tree work externally. So there's a small budget in for that. And then that gives us our total. We generally, as a policy at Equa Group, we put in a 10% contingency on top of the build figure. So this is just to deal with the unforeseen. Let's hope we don't have to dip into that, but generally there's always something that will pop up on a development. Maybe when you stripped it back. When the contractor started, and you can just find there's just something there that's going to cost a little bit more money. So we've got quite a handsome contingency there at £300,000. That comes to our total, and then it also gives us some metrics over here, which is good to compare to other projects as well. How is this performing in terms of the budget? Have we got enough in? Do we need to consider more? And we've got a number of tables that we produce on each of the, or summarises all of our projects, and we can just see where this sits in the score table of achievable costs. So just moving down, then we've got, so we've gone through the land purchase, we've gone through the build or the conversion costs. There's then other fees, there's professional fees and costs, and these are costs for buying the building, maybe stamp duty, any surveys, funding costs, all those sort of things. There's fees there. If we we've got detailed design, which obviously we get straight into once we get hold of the building. Project management, cost management, some planning activity maybe. Utilities are always outside of the contractor's price. That's something we deal with. And so on and so forth. So that builds up the professional fees and costs to support the entire project. So in this occasion on Zurich House, we've got an overall development cost, which is all of those numbers at 8.464 million, and that is consistent across the low, mid, and high point. So we don't add any particular money because contingency is already built into that number. So it would be unfair and probably wrong to put further contingency at this level. Okay, so when we then deduct the costs from the gross development value on our low, medium, and high ranges, we get to our gross profit position. Now, this is the starting point, really, and this is before selling costs, before costs of funds. So we've got in here the selling cost. If you remember, when the first email we sent off to the local agents, we were asking them, could you please provide your proposal for supporting us in the sale of the scheme? So they'll be providing that information, which is great evidence to just pop in there. And also if it's Help to Buy. So generally we, across all of our schemes, we'll apply for Help to Buy support. It just really moves on and creates a huge ground rush with the sale process. So Help to Buy is great, and it absolutely moves them on a lot quicker. You will probably find a lot of these will be sold off plan very quickly, but it does cost a little bit more. So there's a little bit, there's a few more pounds for legals, etc. So there's just an assessment there of quantum of Help to Buy. And then we're into the cost of funds. So this is the senior debt and the exit fees. And then you can see there's a VAT bridge there, etc. So that just summarises at a net position, which is where we gauge, how the deal is performing. On the basis that the GDV is what it is, and on the basis that the cost is what it is, really, if we're in a negotiation environment, the only moving part is the price you're paying for the building. So if we're struggling at a net profit position, we will just renegotiate or put in a lower offer and just bring the price down, and that will elevate the profit position to something that is more acceptable. We tend to see that the lenders are happy to lend above 15, 16, 17%, but below 15% they get quite nervous, and a lot of lenders will actually fall away because they won't support the scheme, because in their view the developer has to make a profit, otherwise the scheme is not viable. If the scheme is not viable and the developer gets into trouble, then their funding is at risk. So that's the way they look at it. So on that subject, so senior debt lending, this is a front-end dashboard. It disappears behind the scenes into one of the tabs and starts calculating interest, etc. But this is a place where we pop all of the information in terms of the term sheet from the lender. So they generally give us information around maximum loan to value, maximum loan to gross development value, what their interest rate is, arrangement fees. So this is almost going into the deal, what they charge, and whether the arrangement fees are paid up front or they're paid as part of the facility. So they add it to the facility. Some have different options. Broker, what they pay the broker, and an exit fee. You just need to watch on the exit fee how they've linked the exit fee. So it's percentage based, but have they linked it to the advance, i.e. the gross loan facility, or have they linked it to GDV? If it's linked to GDV, that number will be a lot larger. So just be careful on that. And obviously term of facility, etc. So The next box is private capital. So this is a calculation of how much cash over and above the senior debt is required to get the development from the start point to the end point. What you might see where people just get a little bit out of shape is you'll see the lender will go, okay, we agree with your development cost. We know what we're going to loan to you. Therefore, the difference is the cash you need to put in. No, that is not the case. Okay. What that doesn't consider is cash flow. It doesn't consider VAT payments and VAT recovery and the timings of that. So just need to be really careful around that. So what we've got an engine that sits behind this sheet that runs three cash flow forecasts, and we can go to that just now actually. So here we go. We'll go on the low. Okay, so this is the cash flow forecast for Zurich House, assuming a low position. We set, you can see across the top, months 1 to whatever, and these numbers, it's an illustration, but this is the forecast starting bank balance figure, and then at the end of the month we forecast what the bank balance will end up at. Okay, and then that gets carried forward to the next month. So we've got all that forecast. That's based upon a simulation of drawdown from the main contractor. It deals with VAT payments. It deals with all the professional fees being taken all the way through the deal. It looks at all the costs associated, and then it looks right at the back end on the income coming back in. So those cash flows are run, and then what we do, we target a minimum. I mean, we can change this, but we target a minimum bank balance at any one point in this illustration at £5,000. So you can see in month 11 here, it goes to that threshold. And then it works out, the sheet quite cleverly works out, okay, so what, in order to sustain that minimum position, what's the extra over cash that we need to get to that point? And that's the bit that the senior debt lenders do not consider. So if we go back to the analyzer, we can see here it's an enormous figure actually. It's £240,000 is required as pure cash to enable the development to just surf the wave of the cash flow from start to finish. And I think that's about it. So anyway, I do hope that you found the walkthrough useful and informative, and I thank you for taking the time out of your day just to be with me and allow me to go through that. So you've been listening to Nigel Green of Equa Group, and thank you very much.